Spring Television. Ours it is.
Government area of Kaduna State. Nigerian Association of Resident Doctors reaches agreement with federal government over 5-day warning strike. Court orders Buhari-led government to account for the spending of $460 million Chinese loan to fund failed Abuja CCTV project. On the foreign scene, Sudan's army resisted attempt by paramilitaries to advance towards main air base near Khartoum. Good evening, this is News at 7 on Western Spring Television. My name is Okpayemuni. At least 9 people have been killed by bandits during an attack at Ungwan Dakwa village in Birnin Gwari local government area of Kaduna State. House of Assembly member-elect for Birnin Gwari State constituency, Yaya Birnin Gwari, confirmed the incident today. He said the bandits stormed his community at about 2 p.m. on Saturday and immediately opened fire on the innocent residents who were going about their daily duties. Mr. Gwari said some villagers sustained varying degrees of injuries during the attack and were rushed to hospitals at neighboring Funtua in Katsina State for treatment, while most of the villagers fled from their homes due to fear of a fresh attack by the bandits. 2 passengers got injured today when a Toyota Hiace bus crashed into an Abuja-bound petroleum tanker in Kogi State. The bus was heading to Lokoja from Abuja, but lost control and rammed into the tanker on the other lane. Reports said the moment the bus hit the tanker, which was laden with petrol, it went into flame, burning furiously along the Lokoja-Abuja highway. Kogi Federal Road Safety Corps Sector Commander Stephen Dawulong, who confirmed the incident, said that there were no deaths, but the injured were rushed to a hospital in Koton Cafe for medical attention. Mr. Dawulong, who described the incident as very unfortunate, blamed the accident on the recklessness of the bus driver, said to be on high speed. In the meantime, an explosion caused by a gas cylinder has claimed the lives of no fewer than 4 persons in the Isa local government area of Sokoto State. Eyewitnesses said the explosion occurred in a welder shop in the community. The State Police Public Relations Officer, DSP Sanusi Abubakar, explained that the explosion was not connected to the security challenges bedeviling the area. He also noted that 3 other persons who sustained varying degrees of injury had been receiving treatment in an undisclosed hospital in the state. In Lagos State, the police command today confirmed the electrocution of 2 members of staff of a Eko electricity distribution company. The incident took place in the Obalende area of Lagos Island. The police public relations officer in Lagos, Benjamin Undain, said the case was reported to the Lion Building Division of a command by another member of staff of the EKEDC from Lagos Island. He said the EKEDC worker reported that yesterday, one of his colleagues, simply identified as Umaru, 51 years old, got electrocuted while digging to locate a faulty transformer cable at the P&T Obalende area. In the process, another colleague named Sunday Awaruwa, 48 years old, who tried to rescue the victim, was also electrocuted. Moving on, the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, has intercepted and seized 30.1 kilograms of methamphetamine concealed in containers of powdered custard at the Lagos airport. In a statement, NDLEA spokesperson Femi Babafemi said the illicit drug has a street value of 567 million naira per kilogram and was to be transported to the United Kingdom when it was intercepted on May 16th. The agency's spokesperson said a series of follow-up operations led to the arrest of a freight agent, Nwobodo Chidiebere, a female suspect, Chioma Akuta, and the ultimate drug lord behind the shipment, Charles Eze, who was arrested on May 18th in Lagos. Mr. Babafemi also said the operatives arrested a notorious drug dealer in Mubi local government area of Adamawa State. He added that the agency also arrested some suspects and made seizures of illegal substances in Oyo, Kaduna, Edo, Anambra, Kwara, Jigawa, and Kano states. The Nigerian Association of Resident Doctors and the federal government have reached an agreement over the 5-day warning strike embarked upon by the association. On May 17th, the NARD began a 5-day warning strike to press home its demands after a 14-day ultimatum to the government lapsed. The doctors are demanding an immediate increment in the consolidated medical salary structure to the tune of 200% of the current gross salaries. Worried by the situation, the doctors met with the Senate and House of Representatives committees on health and the Minister of Labor and Employment, Dr. Chris Ngige, to deliberate on their demands. In a statement today, spokesman of the Ministry of Labor and Employment, Olajide Oshundu, said a memorandum of understanding was signed at the end of a conciliation meeting on the issue of doctors omitted in the payment of minimum wage. Consequential adjustment, and the meeting resolved that NARD should represent the list tomorrow to the Ministry of Health. Elsewhere, a federal high court in Abuja has ordered the government of President Muhammadu Buhari to account for the spending of $460 million Chinese loan to fund the failed Abuja closed-circuit television CCTV project. The court also ordered the government to publish the total amount of money paid to Chinese and local companies and contractors, specific details, and the implementation of the project. Justice Emeka Nwite made the orders while delivering judgment in the Freedom of Information suit brought by Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP. This was contained in a statement today by SERAP, which was signed by its Deputy Director, Kolawole Oluwadare. According to the statement, the suit followed the disclosure in 2019 by the Minister of Finance, Zainab Ahmed, that Nigeria was servicing the loan, adding that she had no explanations on the status of the project. Justice Nwite also ordered the government to provide the details, clarifying whether the sum of 1.5 billion naira paid for the failed contract meant to construct the headquarters of a Code of Conduct Bureau was part of another loan obtained from China. Catholic Bishop Emeritus of Abuja Archdiocese John Cardinal Onayeko today warned against the dangers of electoral malpractices, saying the masses feel the direct impact of a rigged election. He also joined in the call for live broadcast of Presidential Election Petition Tribunal, noting that it should not be like a secret meeting, because the voters need to follow up on how their votes are being defended. Cardinal Onayeko said this in an interview with journalists today to mark the end of this year's 57th World Communication Week. He called on the judges at the Election Petition Tribunal to dispense judgment fairly and allow the proceedings to be transparent so that Nigerians can rekindle their hope in the judiciary. He also admonished journalists to give voice to all groups as they cover the activities for for the May 29th handover. Former Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, Lasun Yusuf, has lamented the death of true governance in Nigeria. Speaking with Western Spring Television in Osogbo, Mr. Lasun stated that it was sad that several Nigerian leaders in the corridor of power had little knowledge about making policies and decisions that would directly improve the lives of citizens. The former Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives also described as sad that many political leaders in Nigeria who desire to lead do so for pecuniary gains.
99% of people who go to government in Nigeria cannot relate government to development. I repeat, 99% of people who find themselves at the corridor of power, either at local, state, or federal level in Nigeria, don't have any business in being government. You cannot go back and interpret that to mean so many things. But I will give you examples. When I was the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, I knew right in my mind that the only thing I can do for my community to show that I understand government was to facilitate in making sure that Ojutu Bridge on the Irile River was reconstructed. I was clear. When I got the opportunity, I put the bridge in the budget. And lo and behold, today, that bridge is complete. People are using it. But the best part of it is that when the construction of the bridge was being rounded up, the immediate past government discovered that the road was no good, and they went there and tied the road. And so today you drive to Ilobu. But whereas if I did not do that bridge, the attraction that the road was not good will not be there. Or the government will want to do the road, leave the bridge undone, and this is the bridge that on an average weekend, it will take you a minimum, at least on an average weekend of Friday and Saturday, it will take a minimum of 2 to 2.5 hours to cross a less than 20-meter bridge. That is how to relate government.
A former governor of Akwa Ibom State, Godswill Akpabio, has called on Nigerians and members of the incoming 10th National Assembly not to assess him using his brief tenure as Minister of Niger Delta Affairs. Senator Akpabio said he preferred to be judged by his record as a lawyer of 36 years, commissioner of 6 years, and a governor for 8 years. He said this in an interview with journalists in Abuja. Senator Akpabio, representing Akwa Ibom Northwest, is one of the contenders for the office of a Senate President for the 10th National Assembly, scheduled for inauguration on June 6th. He was first elected to the Nigerian Senate in 2015, from where he became the minority leader on the platform of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, but later defected to the ruling All Progressives Congress, APC, though he is a preferred candidate of the president-elect and APC. The former governor of the first state, Abdulaziz Yari, and the Senate Chief Whip, Orji Uzor Kalu, have vowed not to step down from the Senate presidency race. You're watching News at 7 on Western Spring Television. Still to come, Sudan's army resisted attempt by paramilitaries to advance towards main air base near Khartoum. We'll bring you more on these when we return.
history of guns is traced to China. The Chinese had developed a technology civilization that produced devices identified as guns at about 1000 AD. By the end of the 13th century, the devices had become true guns and described as metal-barreled firearms that fired single projectiles which occluded the barrel. When did gun become an instrument of war? The first battles to be decided by firearms were between French and Spanish soldiers. The early 16th century warfare included Magnano in 1515, Bicocca in 1522, and Pavia in 1525. The wars were fought in Italy. The gun is a weapon of destruction and death, but humanity sees it as a potent instrument of family destruction. People with guns feel safer even if they don't display it. Western Spring Television identifies history of guns as a watershed event in history. Aminatu, the legendary queen of Zazao, is best known to historians as Queen Amina of Zaria, an old walled town and capital of the Hausa state of Zazao. Amina was a great warrior and the first woman to rule the ancient kingdom of Zazao. Her 34 years as queen witnessed an unprecedented expansion of Zazao by conquests. Queen Amina of Zaria belongs to the class of Amazons by the might of Harami and her strings of conquests. She opened Zaria to trans-border trade and was said to have initiated kola nut cultivation in the ancient kingdom. The Hausa Muslim figure was born in 1533 and died in 1610 at the age of 77 years. Folklores remember Aminatu, the queen of Zazao, as a brave, smart and talented leader whose giant statue now adorns the National Arts Theatre in Lagos, Nigeria, while many educational institutions bear her name. Western Spring Television identifies Queen Amina as a watershed character in history. The Korean War of 1950 to 1953 pitched North and South Korea against each other in response to intrigues by nations beyond their border with different interests from those canvassed by the two brother nations. The Korean War had all the nuances of an external conflict induced by powers that were interested in subjugating North and South Korea. Japan had leveraged on its military power to annex Korea in 1900 and imposed a military union that did not sit well with the citizens. Japan not only lost its war of conquest against Korea, all its powers were obliterated by the effect of the World War II. The end of World War II got Korea divided into two nations along 38 parallel lines by the instrumentality of the United States of America and the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic. The Korean War lapsed into a Cold War when it stopped the prying eyes of external forces into the internal affairs of a nation now divided along its north and southern territories. Western Spring Television identifies the Korean War as a major event in history. On 16th September 1923, named Harry Lee Kwan and known as Lee Kuan Yew, he was often addressed by his initials of LKY. Lee Kuan Yew was a barrister and the first Prime Minister of Singapore between 1959 and 1990. Educated at Raffles Institution from 1936 to 1940 and the Fitzwilliam House between 1947 and 1949, Lee Kuan Yew established a highly effective and anti-corrupt governance system that midwives the transformation of Singapore into a high net worth income economy within a generation. He never hid his exception to Western mode democratic ideal, which he believed had not assisted developing nations to attain good government. Before his death on 23rd March 2015, the People's Action Party, which he founded, had used its political influence to establish the United World College of Southeast Asia to expand his economic ideas among countries that constitute the Asian Tiger. Western Spring Television identifies Lee Kuan Yew as a major character in history.
Welcome back. This is still News at 7 on Western Spring Television. A reminder of our headlines. At least 9 people killed by bandits in Benin Gwari local government area of Kaduna State. Nigerian Association of Resident Doctors reaches agreement with federal government over 5-day warning strike. Court orders Buhari-led government to account for the spending of $460 million Chinese loan to fund-failed Abuja CCTV project. On the foreign scene, Sudan's army resisted attempt by paramilitaries to advance towards the main air base near Khartoum. The All Progressives Congress APC Kogi State chapter has suspended the executive officers of all wards in the Igalamela Odolu local government area of a state for alleged anti-party activities. In a statement in Lokoja, APC State Secretary Joshua Onoja accused the suspended officials of alleged financial inducement aimed at weakening the party in the state. He stated that the dissolution was at the instance of a report received by the state chapter of the party for an alleged gross violation of the party's guidelines by the executives who are supposed to be the custodian of the APC constitution. Describing the situation as unfortunate and worrisome, the APC chieftain said the suspended officials were being investigated by the party. According to him, a caretaker committee will be constituted immediately to pilot the affairs of the party in the affected council, pending a full report of investigative committee. Mr. Onoja directed the suspended officers to hand over all party materials in the possession to the state secretariat in Lokoja, warning the sacked officers to henceforth desist from parading themselves as executives of the party. On the foreign scene, Sudan's army is resisting an attempt by paramilitaries to advance towards its main air base near the capital, Khartoum. The airfield is used by the military to carry out airstrikes on the rapid support forces and was also used by foreign governments to evacuate their nationals early in the conflict. The fighting comes despite the announcement of a new 7-day truce. Previous ceasefires have collapsed within minutes of being called. A U.S.-Saudi statement said the latest truce would come into effect tomorrow evening and will be different as it provides for a ceasefire monitoring mechanism. The U.S. and Saudi Arabia have been brokering talks between the army and the RSF in the Saudi city of Jeddah for the past 2 weeks in an attempt to end the conflict that broke out on the 15th of April. Fighting between the two sides has plunged the country into chaos, with more than 1 million people thought to have been displaced and several hundred others killed. Elsewhere, UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has called China the biggest challenge of this age at the G7 meeting. It says that China's behavior is increasingly authoritarian at home and assertive abroad. It also says Ukraine must win the war against Russia and gain a lasting peace. Today is the final day of the summit in Hiroshima, where leaders have discussed the support for Ukraine. Ukraine's leader, Volodymyr Zelensky, arrived yesterday and joined the key negotiations today. The G7 comprises the US, UK, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, and Japan, and 8 other nations have been invited this year.
The G7 also demonstrated unity of purpose on China. China poses the biggest challenge of our age to global security and prosperity. They are increasingly authoritarian at home and assertive abroad. And as the G7 have showed, the UK's response is completely aligned with our allies. This is all about de-risking, not decoupling. And with the G7, we are taking steps to prevent China from using economic coercion to interfere in the sovereign affairs of others. On the substantive issue of Ukraine and what this summit means means for Ukraine. I think there are probably three important things for me. The first is President Zelensky's presence here. I think that in and of itself was a very powerful moment to see President Zelensky standing shoulder to shoulder with his G7 allies. I think sends a powerful message to Russia and the world that we are united behind President Zelensky and his people and will continue to support him for as long as it takes.
Meanwhile, United States President Joe Biden has announced a new package of military aid for Ukraine up to $375 million. The package will include ammunition, artillery, armored vehicles, and training. Mr. Biden also said he had received assurance that U.S.-made F-16 fighter jets provided by Western countries would not be used to attack Russian territory, but they could attack Russian troops in Ukraine. He called for a just peace that respects Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. He said his visit to the Hiroshima Memorial was a powerful reminder of a devastating reality of nuclear war and needs to strive for peace.
You know, in my private meeting with President Zelensky after the G7 meeting and with his staff, I told him the United States, together with our allies and partners, is going to begin training Ukrainian pilots in fourth-generation fighter aircraft, including F-16s, to strengthen Ukraine's Air Force as part of a long-term commitment to Ukraine's ability to defend itself. We provided to last year all that they needed to deal with what they were dealing with at the moment. And that's when now we're moving in the direction of putting them in a position to be able to defend themselves.
I think no, but you have to understand that there is nothing.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says Russia does not occupy the embattled city of Bakhmut. Russia earlier claimed they are in full control of the city after months of fighting. Mr. Zelensky, however, said Ukraine's military personnel in Bakhmut are accomplishing a very important mission. The Ukrainian president says it will not share precise details, but insists the city is not occupied by Russia as of today. He also said Russia will feel when Ukraine begins its counteroffensive.
I think no, but you have to understand that there is nothing. They destroyed everything. There are no buildings. It's a pity. It's tragedy, but for today, Bakhmut is only in our hearts. There is nothing on this place. So just ground and a lot of dead Russians, but they came to us. So that our defenders in Bakhmut, they did strong work. And of course we appreciate them for their great job.
In other news, at least 12 people have died after a crash at a football stadium in El Salvador's capital, San Salvador. The incident occurred during a match between local team Alianza and the Santa Ana-based team FAS at Cuscalatan Stadium. The match was subsequently suspended. President Nayib Bukele described the event as unprecedented and said an exhaustive investigation will be launched. Police had earlier said 7 men and 2 women were among the dead, with all the victims over the age of 18. Still ahead, President Buhari to commission 650,000 barrels per day Dangote refinery tomorrow. We have more on these and other business stories after this break. Please stay with us.
Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela was an anti-apartheid activist who gave his all for the elimination of what has been described as the world's most vicious rule of the unjust and man's inhumanity against man. He was born July 18, 1918 in Mvezo, South Africa. Educated and trained as a successful legal practitioner, he took up the gauntlet of a human activist against segregation by the minority white suprematists in South Africa. Africa at the climax of his trial for treason orchestrated by the minority South African government. The great crusader for democratic equality was prepared to pay the supreme sacrifice to establish majority rule in his native land. He told white jurists that if achieving freedom for his people was worth his life, he was prepared to die. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in Robben Island, described as the most notorious prison in the world. It was from this same prison that he came out as a free man to assume office as South Africa's first black president in 1994. Western Spring Television identifies Nelson Mandela as a watershed character in history. Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela was an anti-apartheid activist who gave his all for the elimination of what has been described as the world's most vicious rule of the unjust and Mao Zedong at birth, but globally known as Mao Zedong. He was a Chinese revolutionary and founder, People's Republic of China, which he led as chairman of the Chinese Communist Party from 1949 until his death in 1976. He was a communist who believed in the attainment of power by the instrumentality of gun. His wise saying, "Political power grows out of the barrel of gun," formed the major plank of his revolutionary struggle for the control of China. In the long span of his leadership and political power, Mao Zedong relentlessly entrenched the communist philosophy in China, which emphasized the revolutionary struggle of the vast majority of people against the exploiting class and their state structures. The communist leaders defined the class struggle as people's war. Mao Zedong was a story of grass to grace, having risen from peasantry to preeminent status as China's most respected leader. Western Spring Television identifies Mao Zedong as a major character in history. The British Empire was the largest and the most powerful in the world. At its zenith, the empire embraced a quarter of the earth's land surface and imposed her imperial majesty's rule on more than 458 million peoples across nations and continents. The empire took off with overseas possessions and trading posts established by England, spread over 3 million kilometers between 16th and early 18th century. Like previous empires, the British Empire began to crumble on its weight of overstretched territories and growing unrest in our various colonies. Today, the British Empire no longer exists. What is in place is the Commonwealth of Nations, a loose association of sovereign states which recognize the King of England as the titular head. Western Spring Television identifies the British Empire as a watershed empire in history. Born Jeremiah Oyeni Obafemi on March 6, 1905, Obafemi Awolowo was a prime architect of Nigeria's independence and most consummate advocate of free education and social welfare in Africa's most populous nation. Erudite politician, thinker, and philosopher, Awo was fondly addressed by associates and political colleagues, brought his unique attributes to bear on governance in the defunct Western region. He administered as leader of government business and the premier between 1955 and 1958. Obafemi Awolowo's premiership witnessed pioneering in multi-sectoral policy initiatives and execution. The Western region under his administration paraded several enviable records. First television station in Africa, first real estate in Nigeria, first high-rise building in Nigeria, first modern sports stadium in Nigeria, first agricultural settlement in Nigeria, first modern civil service secretariat in Nigeria, and first industrial estate in Nigeria. His face is on 100 naira denomination as a mark of honor for his distinguished services to his country. Western Spring Television identifies Obafemi Awolowo as a major character in history.
Welcome back now to business. President Muhammadu Buhari will tomorrow commission the 650,000 barrels per day Dangote Petroleum Refinery and petrochemicals in Lagos State. According to a statement by the Dangote Group, the refinery will be churning out premium motor spirit, diesel, aviation jet fuel, and dual-purpose kerosene, amongst other refined products. Speaking about the magnificent plant, the CEO of Dangote Petroleum Refinery and Petrochemicals, Sanjay Gupta, stated that it is the largest single-train refinery in the world. Experts believe the Dangote refinery could help achieve macroeconomic stability in Nigeria, but noted that it cannot eradicate all the problems in Nigeria's oil sector.
Everything in this plant, by way of size, is the first. It is the single largest single train refinery in the world. There is no column which can process 650,000 barrels per day in one column, first of its kind. The capacity of RFCC builds the next best by miles. This is a 10 MMTPA plant. Maximum which you have seen is 6-7. This is way ahead of that. And to add to that, this is an RFCC. This is a lot more complex one. You have probably one of the biggest hydrocrackers designed on a mild hydrocracking route. About upwards of 7.5 million tons capacity. One of the biggest MS blocks which you can have in the world. The towers which you see, the sizes of the furnaces, the reactor regenerator, it has touched the elastic limits of mechanical design. Beyond this, in a single train, is practically not possible.
The National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control, NAFDAC, says more than 70% of food exported from Nigeria are rejected abroad. Speaking at the official commissioning of a new NAFDAC office complex at the Murtala Mohammed International Airport in Lagos, the agency's Director General, Mojisola Adeyeye, said the issue was causing huge financial losses to the exporters and the country at large. However, she said the incidence of rejection of food exports by other countries may soon become a thing of the past if collaboration between NAFDAC and other government agencies at the ports is strengthened. Professor Adeyeye said along with the port agencies, NAFDAC would ensure goods being exported of requisite quality and meet the regulatory requirements of importing countries before they are even packaged. She added that the mandate to safeguard the health of the populace and the quality of imports into a nation like Nigeria, which is overwhelmingly dependent on importation, cannot be actualized without the effective presence of NAFDAC at the ports and land borders. The Director General commended the police and Nigeria Customs Service for the symbiotic relationship that exists between its management and the agency. In the meantime, the federal government has approved the appointment of a current manager in Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja, Kabir Mohammed, as the new managing director of the Federal Airport Authority of Nigeria, FAN. He is expected to assume duty next week. This follows the expiration of a tenure of the outgoing managing director of the Federal Airport Authority of Nigeria, Captain Rabiu Yadudu. Mr. Mohammed, before his appointment as the new FAN boss, was also the regional general manager, North Central. He was appointed as the chairman of Aviation Roadmap Implementation Committee in January 2022 by the Minister of Aviation, Adi Sirika. A position effectively combined with his office as the general manager, special duties at FAN. Welcome to sports. Bendel Insurance equaled the longest unbeaten run 18 in the Nigeria Premier Football League after they were held to a 1-1 draw by Nasarawa United at the New Just Stadium this afternoon. Akwa United set the longest unbeaten record during the 2020-2021 season. Insurance recorded 8 wins and 10 draws from 18 matches in the regular season. Echeta deputy gave the visitors the lead 2 minutes before the half-hour mark. Nasarawa United, who have already been relegated, fought back in the second half and equalized through Chinedu Owanacham in the 51st minute. Insurance will now shift attention to the Federation Cup and NPFL Super 6 playoffs. The NPFL Super 6 playoffs will start in Lagos on June 3rd. In England, Manchester City celebrated a third successive Premier League title triumph with a 1-0 victory over Chelsea in a relaxed party atmosphere at Etihad Stadium. City were confirmed as champions without even playing after Nottingham Forest to win against Arsenal yesterday, allowing manager Pep Guardiola to make 9 changes from the side that trashed Real Madrid to reach the Champions League final. Erling Haaland was rested by Julian Alvarez, provided the cutting edge in his absence, with a clinical finish to put City ahead after 12 minutes as the jubilant fans basked in warm sunshine waiting for the trophy presentations and celebrations. Chelsea had some of the better chances as the game went on, with City's deputy keeper Stephen Ortega saving from Raheem Sterling when clean through and Conor Gallagher heading against the post. Calvin Phillips headed against the woodwork for City as they closed out another win in the relentless run that has brought them the title and the chance of a treble with the FA Cup final at Wembley and Champions League final in Istanbul to come. Leeds United's Premier League fate is hanging by a thread as Europa Conference League finalist West Ham came from behind to secure a 3-1 victory at London Stadium. For the second week running, Leeds were unable to hold on to a first-half lead, and this time they did not even pick up a point following late goals from Jarrod Bowen and Manuel Lanzini, an injury to striker Patrick Bamford, which must make him a doubt for Leeds' final game against Tottenham Hotspur at Elland Road next weekend was further disappointment for Sam Allardyce. Leeds have to win that match and hope Everton do not beat Bournemouth at Goodison Park or Leicester City collect 4 points from the final 2 games in order to stay up.
Well, it's obviously really disappointing. I think that there was lots of things that sort of suggested that we have an opportunity to get 3 points in the first half, but unfortunately our failings in the final third let us down at that stage, and then we let in a sloppy goal to get them back to 1-1. So I was really, quite upbeat, but obviously our second half went to be a bit of a battle, a bit of a struggle, and then whatever we tried in terms of making changes didn't improve the situation for us as it should have done, and I think that in the end we go gun-ho, throw 4 up top and try and get to 2-2, which will be a better result than the one we've got, and fail to miss our best chance, I think, with Cree, like you mean. So first half opportunities galore, but not enough quality, and second half needed to defend much more solidly, much more resilient, and wait for an opportunity to come our way and try and take it, and unfortunately that wasn't the case. Well, yeah, I mean, both lack of confidence and that's definitely the case, because the West Ham players made a lot more or showed better ability in the final third than we did. So we have to look at ourselves and say, if we are, and we do compete at this level, and we do win next week, and we do miraculously stay in the league, we have, in terms of quality, have a long way to go for the squad. I think that the first 11, 12 players really show up there, but when we need that squad these days, they haven't quite shown the impact in a short period of time.
In the meantime, Evan Ferguson scored twice in the first half as Brighton beat Southampton in the Premier League to secure European football for the first time in their history. The 18-year-old forward opened the scoring with a powerful low shot pass to Saints goalkeeper Alex McCarthy before doubling the Seagulls' advantage with a first-time finish from inside the area. Brighton strengthened their grip on 6th place in the table and have all but qualified for next season's Europa League because of a superior goal difference over 7th place Aston Villa. A point from the two remaining matches will confirm a sixth place finish, but victory over the South Coast rivals assures Brighton of a Europa Conference League spot at the very least. Southampton, whose relegation was confirmed with a defeat by Fulham last time out, will finish their top-flight campaign against Liverpool at St Mary's next Sunday. And out of tennis, Britain's Andy Murray has withdrawn from the French Open to prioritize the grass court season in the build-up to Wimbledon. 36-year-old Murray has only played at Roland Garros once since 2017. The three-time Grand Slam champion won the clay court challenger event in Aix-en-Provence in May, but has struggled for consistency on the surface. The French Open, the second Grand Slam of the year, takes place from the 28th of May to the 11th of June. And that's all these are. But before we go, here is a recap of our major stories. At least 9 people have been killed by bandits during an attack at Ungwan-Dikwa village in Bidanim-Gwari local government area of Kaduna State. The Nigerian Association of Resident Doctors and the federal government have reached an agreement over the 5-day warning strike embarked upon by the association. A federal high court in Abuja has ordered the government of President Muhammadu Buhari to account for the spending of $460 million Chinese loan to fund the failed Abuja closed the circuit television CCTV project. On the foreign scene, Sudan's army is resisting an attempt by paramilitaries to advance towards its main air base near the capital, Khartoum. Please do follow us on our social media handles on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Western Spring Television. You can also watch us live on our YouTube channel at Western Spring Television. I am Opeyemuni. Thanks for watching.
Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela was an anti-apartheid activist who gave his all for the elimination of what has been described as the world's most vicious rule of the unjust and man's inhumanity against man. He was born July 18, 1918 in Mvezo, South Africa. Educated and trained as a successful legal practitioner, he took up the gauntlet of a human activist against segregation by the minority white supremacists in South Africa. At the climax of his trial for treason, orchestrated by the minority South African government, the great crusader for democratic equality was prepared to pay the supreme sacrifice to establish majority rule in his native land. He told white jurists that if achieving freedom for his people was worth his life, he was prepared to die. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in Robben Island,